Hey everybody, welcome back to the Senators Roundtable. I'm your host Jacob Billington, joined by Dayton and Paul as usual. Dayton's looking pretty good today with his new camera. Paul, you're looking good as well, but you don't have a new camera. Um, so we're gonna kick things off today. One of the biggest news stories out of Ottawa lately has been it kind of started with Artem Zub out with a broken foot, or fractured foot. I'm not sure the extent of it, but he's been placed on LTIR. So the Ottawa Senators have over 4 million in space to kind of play with now. Plus they weren't straight up against the cap, so they have some wiggle room with the cap right now. And there's been some trade rumors going on, and Josh Norris seems to be at the forefront of it. We talked a lot about Josh Norris in the summer. First question I'll ask you, and I'll start with you on this, Paul. Is now the time to trade Josh Norris?
Well, sure, now would be the time, but there are a whole bunch of impediments to trading Norris, right? And some of the speculation I've seen from the pundits, Frank Cervalli, for example, this is the stuff. This is fantasy hockey, and this is the NHL. So if I look at Norris, damaged goods, huge risk, injured most of his career. Um, Overpriced at $8 million. I mean, who's going to take him off your hands? That's my question. I took a look, he's on track for about 55 points this year. And I, took a random look at other players scoring in that realm. And, you've got Tarasenko, he makes 4.8 million, Blake Coleman, 4.9. Tage Thompson in Buffalo makes 7, but Norris is no Tage Thompson. And Quinton Byfield, he's making 6.2. And I'd be hard pressed to argue, if I'm the potential buyer, are you really going to try and make the case that Josh Norris is his equivalent? Maybe at one time. I don't see it now. So, this stuff for me, it strikes me of all the speculation. It's just a bunch of pundits sitting around playing fantasy hockey.
Fair enough. Dayton, do you have the counter argument to that, or do you agree with Paul?
Um, I don't fully disagree with Paul. I think the time to trade Norris was maybe about a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. Um, Whether or not that was when his value was the highest is, I think, beside the point. That was the time I think that some big changes needed to be made for this team to move forward. And those changes weren't made. And now we're seeing a little bit of a stagnation, I think. There isn't really any growth. We're just seeing players play for what we expect them to play. We don't see them exceeding any expectations, I don't think. Um, Norris is, on pace to hit that 50, 60 points. 30 of those are uh, should be goals. So he's scoring a lot, which is what everyone hoped. And he was also kind of projected to be about a 60 point player. That was about the max. Um, so I think looking at trades for him right now is good. It would have been better earlier.
I
Yeah, that's
mean,
fair.
one of the problems in making trades in the NHL, today's NHL, they're really hard to do. And one of the reasons for that is the cap space. Most clubs are right up close to it. So most trades have got to be a one-to-one. And that's really hard to do. You've got to line up contracts and salaries and respective needs, and Norris would be tough to move.
Almost like this team was constructed to lose.
Somebody should write about that.
Somebody should.
If you missed it, Dayton put out an article saying that the Ottawa Senators are constructed to lose, and it's a kind of a thank you note to Pierre Dorion, and yeah, it's it's a great read. I really enjoyed it, as well as yours, Paul, on how the Senators are just fumbling November again.
But I think that's a really great point, Paul. Like he's not playing to his price point, right? And so
No.
the trades aren't ever going to make sense because you have to match that money for the most part, right? If you're going to get a player of at least equal or better return. It's going to be messy. The contract should never have been that high, but it was signed that high because they needed him to stay, because they needed to put the core together. But doing so sacrificed getting the rest of the team together. And it was just so short-sighted, even though it was a long-term deal.
Yeah, and you do a good job of, chronicling that in your article. The Senators are constructed to lose. I was kind of worried about you though, Dayton. You might have to go to a witness protection program if you lived in Ottawa. You ought to be all right, in Regina, but who
Yeah,
knows?
I'll hide in Saskatchewan. I'm pretty safe out here.
Yeah.
So I wrote about three potential destinations, and I just published this today. So I just the three mock trades I came up with. I did a good bit of research, and I communicated with the other writers at the Hockey Writers for these respective teams, see if it makes sense. And what I concluded is that they all make sense. They're all fairly decent packages. I think on paper, Ottawa loses at least two of these, but it's kind of like the Chikrin for Jensen. They might lose the trade on paper, but it makes more sense for them. So first up, sending Josh Norris to the New York Rangers for Chris Kreider. Chris Kreider's name has come up quite a bit in the last few days, starting with Elliot Friedman. Do we think so? My trade was Norris and a third round pick for Kreider. Josh Norris has 8 goals and 14 points, and Chris Kreider has just 9 goals, no assists. Kreider also scored 50 goals 3 years ago and has been 40 goals every year or 35 plus every year. Dayton, is this kind of the trade that you think Ottawa should make? They're not super strong on the left side. They do have a bit of a surplus in centers. They might not have an established second line center like Josh Norris is, but I think Shane Pinto can fit in that role pretty well and develop. Um, and then, like I said, the left side right now, it's Brady Tkachuk, Claude Giroux, who that's his offside. It's much rather see him on the right. And then it's Cole Reinhardt and Nick Cousins. They need a left winger, and even when David Perron is healthy, he hasn't done anything this year. So, Dayton, do you like that deal?
I think I do. Yeah. It does feel a little bit like it's maybe chasing a big name who isn't a big name anymore, or at least performing like a big name, which was a big problem for Dorion. He would always go after the big guys, whether it kind of fit or not, um, which is how you get DeBrincat and Chikrin coming in, and it just didn't click, and they were gone, and it was a big loss. Um, the price point though of Norris in a third is a lot easier to swallow than like a first. I think that's a little bit more balanced. The price is definitely a little bit more even. Um, and he brings a lot of veteran leadership. He brings a lot of experience. I would be very happy, maybe not very happy, but I'd be happy to see that deal.
So you say chasing a big name. Chris Kreider, his last 3 seasons have been the best three of his career. 77 points, 54 points, 75 points, 52 goals, 36 goals, 39 goals. So that's the only time he's ever hit the 54 point mark is those 3 seasons, and the only time he's ever hit 35 goals is those 3 seasons. So he's playing the best hockey he's ever played.
What
Um,
about this season though?
he's got 9 goals in 19 games. He's on track. He's on track to win the Cy Young, 38 0. 38 goals, no assists. But um, no, I think that he's a prime candidate. I mean, things just aren't working for the Rangers. Is that Chris Kreider's fault? No. Is it Mika Zibanejad's fault? No. Is it Jacob Trouba's fault? No. Just things aren't working altogether. And I think that Kreider plays a very Brady Tkachuk style of game. Well, he's older, so it feels wrong saying that. But same style as Brady Tkachuk. Like he will beat the crap out of you. He'll go right to the front of the net. And it's something that I think could work really well on the Senators team.
No, I think that's true. Um, I just don't know if I'd say like Kreider is definitely has been playing some of the best hockey of his career.
Mhm.
But it's still like we have to take these season's numbers, and the Rangers aren't doing great, but so the Senators aren't doing great. So what are the chances that Norris becomes a 70-point guy in the Big Apple? You know, it's yeah, he he's well in his 30s. And it's just, you don't generally improve when you're in your 30s. Not always. Like there's some guys who do, have some surprising seasons, but it's always said like that, right? It's a surprising season. Oh, he's 36 and he put up the best numbers ever. Yeah, nobody expects that because it doesn't happen. So you wouldn't be getting, I think, a 70-point Chris Kreider. You'd be getting a 60-point Chris Kreider or a 50-point Chris Kreider. Hopefully, at least 30 goals. Like I think that's expected from him. But you're not getting him like he was 3 years ago.
Fair enough. So, final word, deal or no deal?
I'll still do it. It's a deal.
Deal. Okay. What about you, Paul? Kreider for Norris in the third.
You know what? I'd push back on that. I wouldn't do it. And the reason is he's 33, he's long in the tooth. And the question I've got is if you did that deal, what problem are you trying to solve here? So you've already got Brady Tkachuk and Kreider plays like Tkachuk. So you got a defense problem. Like bringing Kreider in, I don't know what problem you'd be solving. If you bring him in well, you could say he's got veteran experience. Well, they already did that, right? With Amadio and
Braun.
Amadio, and by the way, those guys have flopped, frankly. So like my problem if I'm Staios is, I've got a problem on defense. That's what I want to solve, and Kreider doesn't do it. And it's tempting to make a trade for the sake of making a trade, but you got to be careful. And really, to his credit, I listened to his 20 game uh, interview. You're at the quarter season. He gave an interview a few days ago, and it doesn't sound like he's out there looking to make a trade for the sake of making a trade. You can get yourself in a lot of trouble that way.
All right. So, I think you started with it, but what's your final word? Deal or no deal?
No, no deal.
All right. So, Paul, you did talk about defense. What do you think about David Jiricek out of Columbus? So, my kind of proposed deal here is Norris, a third, and a sixth for David Jiricek. So, Jiricek, very, very young, very, very good, promising defenseman. Just hasn't done it at the NHL level yet. Kind of a different blockbuster than Ottawa has been getting themselves into as of late. So he has 53 NHL games played with 1 goal and 10 assists. He like one of the better defensive prospects across the entire league. I would I would rank him ahead of Carter Chuck at this point, which I don't think is a bold take, especially given the fact that he's 20 years old, 6'4", 204, and just a really good defensive guy. Paul, is he the kind of defenseman you think Ottawa should go after? And would you take that deal?
What was the deal again? It was Norris.
Norris, a third and a sixth for your check.
What's the third and a sixth? Okay, so he's promising on paper. Really hasn't proven himself. I think he'd be a lot of risk. If I'm Staios, I'm looking at why the Blue Jackets don't have confidence in him. They've been pretty clear. He's not NHL ready at this point. So yeah, I'd be a little worried. I wonder if I could I get more from for Norris than and those draft picks than him. That
Okay.
would be
And you know what? That's fair. It's always hard trading for a high end prospect because you're trading a guy like ceiling wise, Jiricek has the potential to be a much better player than Norris is right now, but potential is nothing until it is something. Dayton, what are your thoughts?
I think you're checking Norris are kind of in the same boat in that they're, not my favorite term, but damaged goods. They've had a lengthy injury history. Jiricek hasn't really found a spot in Columbus, but lots of good prospects have really struggled. So I think there's similar issues with that team in just how it's constructed and how they're putting it together. Um,
yeah.
so I think if Columbus threw in a pick or two, then I take the deal. But if Ottawa's giving up the picks and getting just Jiricek back, I won't do it.
Fair enough.
I
I'd be happy to do it. I think a third and a sixth round pick kind of helps offload that contract. You're not retaining anything on that, and it's still 5 more years after this year. So that's why I threw the picks in, is just kind of, hey, we know this guy. They can be a little shaky, might be a little hesitant to trade for him, regardless of how good he is. So here's a couple picks for you. That was my thoughts throwing those in there.
That's
yeah, I
fair.
mean, listening to Staios though, I think his mindset, and I think the mindset of this organization is, we need results now. We're not willing to spend money on potential. We've been doing that for what, 7 years of a rebuild? How'd that work for you? So,
I'll counter
you know,
that by saying David Jiricek would be Ottawa's second best defenseman this season. It's a right-handed defenseman. He's better than Jacob Bernard Docker today. He's better than Travis Hamonic today. Uh, Zub hasn't been great, albeit he's been injured. And coming back from an injury, he didn't look good. Now he's injured again. I would say that David Jiricek today is the second best right-handed defenseman that Ottawa would have.
yeah, but why wouldn't you go after guys like, I'm Truba in New York is for sale. TJ Brody, Connor Murphy, those are proven commodities.
Well,
More of
that next up on my list, actually, it's a great transition. Josh Norris to the Chicago Blackhawks for Connor Murphy, a 2026 second round pick, and a fourth round pick, just for Josh Norris. Is that the kind of deal you'd like to see? Connor Murphy has been um, one of the most underrated defensemen in the league this year. He's been a top pair guy. He's been a good shutdown guy. Blocks a ton of shots. He's getting good point totals for the kind of player he is. And he's kind of a minute eating guy. He's over 20 minutes a game. The Blackhawks aren't good, but he does look good. With the uncertain future of Chicago needing first line center or top six center, because Connor Bedard might move to the wing, it
Yeah.
makes sense for them to want to go out and get Josh Norris. And behind Connor Bedard, they don't have any centers right now. They have Ryan Donato playing on the second line, who, to be honest, is having an unreal season, but he's not a second line center. Um, so yeah, it's Connor Murphy, a second round pick, and a fourth round pick for Josh Norris. Dayton, what do you say?
Yeah, I like that. I agree with you. I think Murphy has had a strong season on a bad team. He's just got 8 points in 21 games, but he has a +4. I know plus minus isn't everything. On the Blackhawks, I don't know how you stay positive. That's a team that isn't winning, right? So players should be all in the minuses. He leads the team with a +4. So I think there's a lot of it feels to me like a Nick Jensen acquisition. And with the extra picks, because he is a bit more underrated, um, I think that's a great deal.
All right, Paul, what do you think?
I'm all over that. Great minds think alike.
Awesome. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the Senators looking for a defenseman. So we talked about Jiricek, who's been in every single rumor as of late. We talked about Connor Murphy. Are there any that you guys have in mind? Paul, I know you just named a few. Are there any more that you have in mind for Ottawa to potentially target?
Well, one I forgot to mention was a blast from the past, Cody Ceci. He's going to be a free agent.
I got flamed on Twitter. I mentioned that a few weeks ago when we were here, and somebody clipped it and tagged me and said, "Are you seriously suggesting they go get Cody Ceci?" So if you're watching this episode, shout out to you. Um,
Well, he's they got to move him. What about the other one I would mention is Evan Bouchard from Edmonton. He's going to be a free agent too. So
yeah, he's gonna be wanting way too much money. He was over a point per game last season. Edmonton's not gonna let him go.
yeah,
No, I think
yeah.
they'd happily pay an $8 million for a guy like that.
Yeah,
Ottawa can't afford that.
they might think they can, but they can't. Might as well give another defenseman 8 million. So Dayton, what do you think? Is there any defenseman kind of forefront of your mind?
Forefront, not really. I might try to pick over some teams that are on more of a rebuild. Um, going towards someone like, San Jose? Would they look at maybe moving Liljegren? Liljegren? I know he changed the
I think it's
pronunciation a little bit.
Liljegren. I
I
don't
know what you
know.
mean. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, like that's a guy who could step in and play some decent minutes. He's a talented guy. He's not having a great season, so probably could come cheap. Um, I yeah, I'm gonna have to agree with Twitter a little bit. I don't agree with the CC edition. I think that is just rife for failure. It's yeah, it scares me because I do remember the last time he was in Ottawa. It
No,
wasn't fantastic.
no.
But yeah, I think there's a few teams that you could at least get a little bit away with because they are struggling and getting a guy like Josh Norris, who ironically was drafted by the Sharks. Um, I know we're not necessarily discussing moving Norris at this point, but if he is on the trade block, uh, a lot of teams on the rebuild would love to have someone like that, and you could get some pretty good returns for it.
Yeah, like I wonder, like if we're talking the San Jose Sharks, like does Ottawa look at Jake Wallman and Fabian Zetterlund or something like that?
Interesting.
Like that could be really interesting. I mean, Detroit paid to get rid of Jake Wallman, and he's got 14 points in 19 games. I I don't know. That was a terrible move by Yzerman yet again. I don't believe in the Yzer plan. I'm adamant about that. But yeah, like there could be a lot of options out of San Jose as well. I don't hate that.
Mhm.
All right. So I asked you both to bring me a blockbuster trade, and we'll play a little bit more deal or no deal. Um, so we went through my three, and that's actually what kind of sparked that article. Was I was looking at all these deals and stuff, and I was like, well, these are all about Josh Norris, so I'm going to throw them in here. So Paul, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll throw some spaghetti on the wall. Package up. Maybe well, a lot of salary moving out, but Norris, Pinto, and Giroux. Giroux's you got to move him in. Well, I was going to say he's going to be a free agent. You got to move him. But on the other hand, the rumor in Ottawa is with Giroux is he's not going to go. He'll just retire. But I'd package those three up. But then the question is in return for, and that's where we struggle. But Pinto, start of the season, most people would have disagreed with that, but he's really proven himself to be nothing more than a bottom six player. So, move him out.
Yeah, I'd like to see more from Shane Pinto, and Claude Giroux. Honestly, Josh Norris, I don't need to see more out of him. He's doing fine. Like he's having a fine season, and I feel like we should have started with that. Um, there's nothing wrong with the way he's playing. Good two-way game, good in the face-off dot. Just the most expendable of all of the Senators' core pieces, which isn't necessarily fair to him, but sometimes life sucks. But no, you're right. Shane Pinto's only got 3 points in 13 games. Um, I would hate to see them give up on Pinto, but it also kind of makes sense. So yeah. Do you have a potential return for those three? Anybody that you were looking at for a ridiculous, not going to happen blockbuster name?
Well, that's the struggle, isn't it? Because you've got 11, almost $12 million there. I guess you could go out and get the equivalent. I'm definitely, if I'm Staios, I'm not interested in draft picks and prospects. So it's going to be really tough to, find something to come back the other way. It's
Yeah.
a real trade to do. So no, the answer, long-winded answer to your question, no, I haven't identified anything that would come
Okay.
back the other way.
Dayton, do you have a big blockbuster?
Um, Not sure if I have a big blockbuster. But thinking of teams who might be ripe for the picking, the Penguins are in a bit of a mess. Now, that
Mm.
is in the same conference. Um, but I've liked Marcus Pettersson for a while. He is left shot, but he's got 9 points, 23 games, not the worst. Um, I wonder if then you can maybe package in someone like Ricard Raquel, get a winger to because the Senators need wingers. He is on the right side, so I wonder if maybe he'd play offside, or you could move some other guys around. Yeah, maybe looking at something like that, and then just because Norris is the the target, or maybe we can keep Norris. What about what about someone like Shabbat?
You do Shabbat for Pedersen and Raquel.
Not straight up. I think there'd have to be some more, but maybe throw in a first as well.
Could you imagine in 2024, Shabbat and Carlson's playing on the same pair in Pittsburgh after getting destroyed in the playoffs 7 years ago? That would break Senators fans' hearts.
Yeah, yeah.
That would be really funny though.
Yeah, why not? I'm not saying it's a good trade, but it'd be a blockbuster.
So my counter argument to that has been Thomas Chabot might be the Senators' best defenseman again.
Yeah,
Happy
I
to
would
happy to
agree.
say that. Um, it's nice to see him playing pretty well.
So the theory was that Shabbat, the only problem with Shabbat was they needed a stay-at-home defenseman. Then he got one with Jensen, and lo and behold, look at him, and Jensen seems to be flourishing. So,
Who would have guessed?
but uh, but I do take your point. I was looking at some of the stats. Senators that have moved out of town. So you recall a guy called Eunice Corpusalo?
Yeah,
Yeah.
unreal goalie.
Yep. Save percentage this year of 911 and goals against of 2.8. Chikrin, he's number 4 in the league on plus minus with a plus 9. He was minus 30 last year in Ottawa. So you're musing about Shabbat doing well in Pittsburgh. That could happen if you did that deal.
Hmm.
And you're forgetting Mark Kastelik, who is only 4 points away from setting a career high already.
I love that. That's awesome for him.
I'm so happy for him. I love Casty.
There's something in the water in this town, man.
Yeah. And he's actually like he's playing third line minutes, 12 minutes a night. 3 goals, 4 assists already, 22 games. I don't know what it is about Ottawa. Nothing ever works. So,
Yeah.
all right,
Well,
that's oh, go
it's,
ahead.
I mean, I think that just goes back to what we were first talking about, right? That's why I wrote the article. All of
Yeah.
these guys come into Ottawa, fail, are moved quickly because they cannot play in Ottawa, and then all of a sudden they're playing fine outside.
Mhm.
Every goalie that has come in has played fine after leaving. Almost every player has played fine after leaving. This team was not built correctly. And it's weird, you know, with just a touch of sarcasm, to see a player like Corpusalo playing well in front or behind a team that was built well. The Bruins are not doing as good as they have been in the past. That's still a well-constructed team that has been working together well for many years. They have the right amount of depth. They have, a competitive edge. That's a good team. Corpusalo is doing well with that. Hmm, weird.
And even though the Bruins are struggling, he's still doing
Exactly.
well because of their play style. Like I don't know, it's not fair. Why can't we have nice things in Ottawa?
Yeah,
Um,
there were some choices made about 7 years ago that are still reverberating through, and they need to be fixed. Those need to be addressed, and it's going to be painful. I think those are going to be some very, very tough moves. Um, but I don't think Staios is going to, strip it down and rebuild. I think this is a team that can be fixed on the fly, so to say. It's just going to be, it's going to be painful.
So give me a prediction for tonight. They're in San Jose. They should be easy 2 points for them tonight, right?
should
It
be
should be.
that it never has been. Ottawa is abysmal in California. I don't know the record over the last couple of years in California, but I mean, I know it's not good. Uh,
No,
They're
it
gonna
hasn't.
snap that. 5-1 Ottawa.
I think it's
Okay.
going to be a little tighter. I'm going to go 4-3 Ottawa.
And is that with a Celebrini hat trick? Because he's been unreal.
I mean, it might as well be.
Yeah. All
Well,
right.
I'm predicting that Ottawa fans are going to get a look at Cece and say, "By God, we need him in this town." So
We need that. I need some of Cody Cece in my life. Do they have any more former Senators that they might as well just bring back too? Pull up their lines here. No, I'm not seeing any other former Senators. That's unfortunate. Just get the gang back together. Let's call Tommy Wingles and Victor Stahlberg and see what they're up to. Bring them back.
Might as well.
Oh,
Couldn't
and
be worse.
Casper Dogvins. He retired.
Oh,
The
right.
greatest shootout attempt in NHL history. I would like to just give a shout out to him. Um, it wasn't much of an NHL player. One of the most memorable moments of my childhood and growing up that I have. He was just it was incredible to watch that. I remember it to this day.
Yeah, that one was a great moment for Senators.
And
Uh,
he didn't even score. And
yeah,
it was just so incredible. He didn't have to score.
very true.
All right, that'll wrap things up for today. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our American friends and watchers. And we will see you next time on the Senators Roundtable. Thanks for taking the time to watch.